All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started today, July 20th. This is kind of the third part of working on a lecture, a project to learn Axios and really build our first full stack application. And so, again, third part, make sure if you're following along, make sure to watch parts 1 and 2. Otherwise, part 3 won't make a lot of sense. But basically where we left off is with our backend and front end built in React. And so if I go ahead and boot these up, so I'm personally back on a desktop. So our backend npm run start dev. And we're booted up on port 5000. And then the front end was npm run start or npm start. To boot up our front end, which is on port 3000. And I am switching computers, so you never know what breaks. It does look like we have our font awesome icons kind of brought in. So again, kind of on this different, got our front end validation there. Interesting error message, cannot read properties of undefined details, localhost. So maybe I have a bug. Let's put in a good credential. Now I'll say EA Gudmestead 1 and password. Okay, and that worked. Putting in something dumb. I'm going to have to figure out why this is doing that. Grant, are you having that issue if you put in just something totally bogus?
Yeah, I've got the same error.
So on our to-do list today, we'll just make that one more item. Troubleshoot invalid credentials login. Uncaught runtime error. Cannot read properties of undefined reading details. So we'll come back to this. But a couple things I want to do today, coming back to the bug. Right now we kind of have a situation where if we give a good credential and we say a user with some good permissions and we log in with a good password, notice if we refresh the page, we kind of lose our token. And so we get this request failed with status code 401, 401 error code. It says the client request has not been completed because it lacks authenticated credentials. So it's saying, hey, you haven't logged in. And so we're kind of losing our credentials when we refresh. And that shouldn't be happening. Interestingly enough, if you installed this Chrome plugin called Edit This Cookie, and you kind of go to a site, you can kind of see all the cookies that have been created. And so our cookie that our backend should be creating isn't really creating a client-side cookie. And so the backend code, if I go to my backend, and you might remember, we made a function to both create a token and then put that token in the cookie and send that cookie back to the client. So res.cookie auth token along with some cookie options. And so that cookie, for whatever reason, even though we're coding that on our back end, it's not sending it to our front end. So that's something to troubleshoot in itself, and there's a couple ways that you could go about it. Number one, just digging deeper into why we're not receiving that cookie. But another way of storing information on the client side, and something that we've already used in a tutorial or two, is called local storage. And so cookies have been around a long, long time. Local storage has not been around as long. It's kind of the way I view it. They're both ways of storing information on the client, and local storage is just the newer way of storing information on the client. The one thing about cookies, if you are familiar with them, you may know that there's a limit to cookie size. And so you could store a fair amount of data in cookies, but there is kind of a cap in how much data you can store, whether that's 1 kilobyte or whatever. How much data can you store in a cookie? And so 4 kilobytes of data, and 4 kilobytes of data isn't a ton. And so if you compare that with local storage, web storage can be accessed using local storage and session storage, 10 M, so kilobytes, I believe, if that's megabytes, right? So a lot more. MIB, not familiar with the I, but MB, megabytes, right? So 1,000 kilobytes is 1 megabyte, and this is, if I'm reading this right, 10 megabytes. So point is, local storage can store a lot more data than a cookie. So we're going to kind of refactor our code to use local storage, since our cookie isn't coming through how I would expect. And this is on the front end. So that's one thing that we're going to do today. We're going to implement like a new way of kind of showing success and error messages called toastify. And so this is just a neat little animation pop-up window where you can show your error messages and kind of clean that up, because right now it's room for improvement, and like we'll make an edit to a record, but it doesn't really give the user a good success message. And we're going to refactor Axios to use environment variables instead of just hard coding the URL. So maybe we start with the easiest of the three, which is going to refactor Axios calls. And so inside of React, let's create react app.env. And so here, there's a whole bit of documentation on environment variables inside of create react app. And as we kind of dig into it, there is a .env file. Oh, this is something that is grabbing my attention. Progressive web apps, where you take your web applications and transform them into a mobile application. So if you ever want to build a mobile app and you already have a web app, it's incredibly easy to transform your web app into a mobile app using what's called a progressive web app. And so this is something that I would love to kind of dig into in another time. Back into here again, you can kind of read into all the different ways we could have development and production environment variables. And so let's go into the front end and let's add a .env.local. And so this .local is, like the name suggests, in development. And we're going to go ahead and create a variable, react app API URL. equals, and I will copy and paste my Axios URL. And so go into components, pick up a component. This is just going to be localhost 5000. And so if I go here, copy and paste, no quotes, and save that. And so I'm going to go to my git ignore. And just like I did on my hands-on test, anywhere that's a .env, not good practice for real world, but for the classroom, I'm going to include my .env files in my on my GitHub repo. Again, don't do that in the real world, but in a class environment. So I just did a Control F for my .env, and I highlighted all of these rows, and I hit Control /, which put a pound symbol, which comments out all of my .env files. So you can see there's env.local, which we can now push up there. Let me click next, 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 next. And I'm going to comment those out. And so you can also see there's a .env.production. So here's env.local. I'll make another file here called .env.production. Now my production backend for me, and ultimately we're going to be deploying this React app live. My live URL, I need to trace that down. It's on Google Cloud. Go to my dashboard, App Engine dashboard. Is right here. And so I'm going to copy that into React app. So again, React app API URL equals, and then my live version is there. So when I deploy this to a server, it should be able to pull from this URL for my backend. But here in local, we're going here. It's kind of the idea. Now we just refactor our code, all of our Axios calls, to use this variable instead of the URL kind of hard coded. So we did this in several places. I'll just do it. I'll test it. I guess the first place that we used it was in our, was it in our list? Yeah, that's our list. So I'm going to have to change this from single quotes to a template backtick so that I can replace the localhost call with a placeholder with my variable there. Now, one second to fix that. It's process.env. There we go. So this is a way into your environment variables. Process.env.url. So let's save that and let's see if we can refactor anything else on the list. Okay. And so let's test that and see if this close, ChatGPT, localhost 3000. You know what my problem was all the time? I was zoomed in. Did you see that? That's why everything was so big on my screen. Hey. I tell you, running in the heat and the dehydration not only affects the body, it affects the mind. I'm telling you. Okay. Still no cookies. Let's log in and let's see if we get our dog walker lists. Request failed with status code 404. Did you get the same?
No, I got it.
You got your dog list.
Yeah.
Good. Let me close it down. And if you got it, why did I not? Oh. Save. Let's go local host 3000. Uh, 404 is not found, right? So let me pause and see what I'm doing wrong. So here's where I've landed. You know, my .env, we never brought in .env into create React app. It is a little weird that Grants is working, but and mine's not. So that's kind of where I'm scratching my head. Maybe he installed .env as like a global package. Maybe I'm not sure. But here's what I'm going to try to troubleshoot this, because when I do a console log and I just put in process env React app API URL, I'm getting undefined, and you know, I'm copying and pasting here, so it's working. I'm gonna stop my front end, and I'm gonna install npm install .env and .save. So we'll bring in .env this way. And now I'm going to try importing .env config. So here, import .env. And now we should be able to, let's see if that works. New window, local host. I didn't bring it up, so let me boot it up. Oh, well, yeah, it really doesn't like .env. It says can't resolve path. so I want to see .env/config. Let's go into node modules. So if I take out this import, boot it back up, no problem. But so maybe just installing .env. I mean, literally, I didn't have to do anything else after that. So maybe again, I think maybe the problem was you had .env maybe installed more globally than I did with this different switch. But as soon as I installed .env, I didn't have to import it. That was an unnecessary step. And now my process.env works. And to demonstrate that, I go to the console and it's giving me localhost 5000. That was saying undefined before, so that fixed it. Fun times. Okay. Let's refactor the rest of these calls. So that's on dog walker list. That's the only one there. I need to recreate my .env.production because of course I deleted that. So let's do that real quick. env.production. Go back to my live site. And what you click on is dashboard, and then you click on App Engine Dashboard. You get the URL in the upper right. And copy that. And the variable is react_app API URL equals save. Come back to localhost. And we're still working. Good. Finally, let's see where else we need to bring that in. So probably on the login form, we're going to have a call to Axios. Again, get rid of the single quotes, replace them with backticks, replace localhost 5000 with a variable process.env react app API URL. Don't guess at it. Copy and paste. Okay. So that's on our login. So let's see if our logins still work. Let's log out and log in. Okay, login still works. Code refactored. So the login form is good. The dog walker editor, that already has a template string. So let's replace localhost with process. Very good. And again, there's another one. There's two of them on the dog walker editor. There's another call here. On the save walker. Cool. So we can delete the refactor Axios to use environment variables. And let's test that last piece, that we can edit cookie to be a different age of 46. And again, this would be a good test. This would be a good way when we say, hey, success. I want a little success message back on this screen. Which is that toastify thing. Alrighty. Next up is to save our token to local storage. And so let's go to app.js, and we have a function called onLogin. And inside of here, I want to say, if the client supports local storage, we're going to do local storage set item auth token, comma, auth.token. So pretty straightforward. Putting an item inside of local storage with the set item method, you give it a key, which is called, we're calling it auth token, and a value separated by a comma, which is this auth object right here that's passed into the function, has a token property, which is your token. The value is the token itself. And so this is going to happen when the user logs in. We're going to see if the local storage exists, which again, if you have a browser in the last, updated within the last 5 years, it should support local storage. So that's to put the token in. Then we're going to bring in useEffect. And basically on the useEffect, when the page loads, if there's a token in there, then we're going to read that token and put it into the auth object. So let's bring in useEffect. Let's see, from React. I don't see any. We already have useState. So then we're also going to bring in useEffect. And right after our hooks here, we'll bring in useEffect, which takes an anonymous arrow function and an array. If you don't put anything in the array, that just means to run this code when the page essentially loads. And inside of here, we'll say if local storage is supported. Let's read const stored auth token local storage get item by its key of auth token. And if stored auth token, we need to bring in the JWT decode. So like we had before, we're not done writing this, that's why. Okay. Let's go ahead and bring in JWT decode like we have in other components. Let's see. What component did we bring that in? Must be the the login form. Okay, import JWT decode with an underscore from JWT hyphen decode. So this is on app.js. Okay, basically, if that token is in local storage, then we decode the token because it's encrypted, and then construct an auth object and call setAuth. No. Let me see what else I need, if anything. All right, let's give this a shot and see what breaks. If you log in, that's all good. Refresh once, better. Okay, this is part, I mean, it didn't do this before. Now it did say request failed with status code 401, so we'll have to look into why it's doing that. But now I can at least refresh, and maybe I can go back home, back to list, and it's keeping me logged in. Now I want to troubleshoot that. Request failed with status code 401. So I think, again, the life cycle of these different controls is a complex topic, but a lot of times it kind of runs code repetitively. And probably, you know, is running some code, and on one instance we're getting a 401, but then you get authenticated, and then you're getting the data back the second time. You know, so a 401 error code again is authentication error. So kind of on the first pass of this page loading, we're getting a 401, but then we kind of get the auth token kind of ready to go, and it's not. So better this is on the list. So use effect is running once, but then maybe auth is changing. And what we'll do here, in the case that it's good, we'll set error to an empty string. Right, so this error is kind of sticking around even though we're getting a successful log there. So now we don't have that problem. Right, so that set error was just sticking around because it was going 401. Now that was interesting, it popped up. See, it pops up and goes away. And then, okay, and then it's, sometimes it does stay. Let me extract it. It's just really an interesting problem. Put set error down there. Okay, not still 1 in 10 times. Does it stay? And I don't love the fact of what it's doing, but it's not staying anymore until, 1 in 20 times. So call that a little bug, something to maybe fix down the road, not something that, maybe too many users are going to find that one. I don't know how many people just sit there refreshing the page 100 times. But it bothers me because it's not perfect, but that's okay. Life isn't perfect. Software is not perfect. All right. So there's saving our auth token to local storage. Anyways, all these errors are going to change with react-toastify. And so let's go. Install another dependency called react-toastify. Cool. Let's stop our front end. So let's, like we always do, just kind of expose ourselves to the package npm. Kind of a fun little name here, Toastify. You've seen these little, probably, these little messages that pop up in the corner, something like this, right? And they have all these little animations, but that's all a toast is, if you will, is to get a little message that pops up in a friendly little window. It's got a little scroller, time, and then it pops off the window, right? So that's a toast. And you can kind of see we're going to the gist. Let's see if we read the gist, right? So we have a toast from react-toastify and a container. So a toast itself has to belong in a container. And let's see. We have a toast container, which is where the control is going to go. Here's a variable, right? This variable stores a function. The function calls the toast method that says, wow, so easy. And there you go. Wow, so easy. We got a little unicorn icon there. And here you can see lots of settings, position, top right. So in your toast container, you can set all these attributes. It says same as that. Lots of settings, right? Pause on hover, which we saw. Top left, okay. Position top left. Show toast. Oh, now it's over here. Top center. Okay. So here you can kind of see the installation introduction, right? So let's go to installation and bring in both the toast container. Probably we're going to do this in the root. First we have to npm install react-toastify. Okay, so let's stop my front end and install this react-toastify. Front end, stop it from running. It doesn't look like it's running. Let's paste the install command. And on my app, step 2 is to import toast container and toast from react-toastify. So the container is the element. Now where do you want it to be? I'm going to put it maybe just underneath main. Toast container. And I'm going to make a function called show success. I'll even call it show success toast. We'll take in a message and we're going to call the toast method. So here is our toast, and then you can kind of see the first argument of the toast is the message, right? So I'm going to put the message here that we pass into the function. And what other options are there? Well, position of top right, all these kinds of things. Let's just do, sure, position of top right. So position colon top right. And that's in an object. So the second is an object. Position top right. And maybe draggable of true. Second quotes. No quotes. Colon, draggable, colon, true. Okay, so we need to pass this down. You know, this needs to go down to like wherever we're saving our dog walker editor. So we'll send it down to dog walker editor. We'll say show success toast equals show success toast. And then we go down to dog walker editor and we receive show success toast. And here on success, not there, but when we save, our walker, then let's show success toast, passing the message of dog walker saved. And let's see what broke. Boot it up. Yeah? No? All right. Well, all right. Not exactly. Probably we're missing the CSS, and probably that's going to make a difference. Toast container, auto close 5,000. What are we missing? That's funny. Let's bring in, oh, yeah, I got to bring in the CSS. Like, that doesn't look right at all. We got to bring in some CSS. So on our app, import react-toastify dist react-toastify .css. And let's, yeah, I know toastify is an unknown word. Let's edit our friend here. Is now 49, dog walker saved. And that's a pretty message. And in the top right, we can kind of do another one that's obviously for success. And you could do another one. In fact, you could refactor this and just call it show toast. And you could put a success message or an error message in it. Right? So maybe we just call this show toast. And we're just going to call this show toast, and receive show toast, and call show toast. Otherwise, show toast er.message. Pretty simple. Bring in the CSS, send your message into the function. Ultimately, I made my own function to call the toast method that you kind of bring in up top. and configure a bunch of options. Again, go to the docs and you can see all the different options and make this all sorts of customizable okay, so you can call promise and then clear it. All sorts of auto close, time, the different transitions, all the settings in here. That is react-toastify. Let's troubleshoot another problem that we're having. If we log out, log in with something bad, cannot read reading details, cannot read properties of undefined reading details. So let's go to our front end. Clearly this is on our login JS, and we could display our error messages in the toast now instead of a state variable like we had these. We can maybe just put these in toast and that would work too. But let's get down into this. This is a successful message, which we're not getting. Okay, so we kind of rewrote this yesterday, and yeah, let's take a look at what's happening here. Now, one thing I kind of skipped. I did have an if block here. Okay, so I had if res error is a thing. If res error is a thing, all of this was nested inside of it. So let's do that. Let's nest all of that, because probably what's happening is it's trying to parse something that doesn't exist. And then I had an else block which is kind of what we used originally with set error er.message. This is kind of what we were using originally, was err.message instead of err response data error, right? So we kind of refactored yesterday, but ultimately we do need the error message that just says, hey, bad credentials. And so I didn't finish this off yesterday because this is all, this was like errors from Joy and different back-end errors that were being sent to the front end, kind of in this convoluted, deep object. I had to like dig into the error messages to find it. So set error, again, this was all still kind of doing just a state error message. So if I refresh that, I think. Okay. At that point, maybe we don't say that. Maybe at that point we just say invalid username or password. And maybe, again, if you kind of inspect, maybe we can read that from the back end. If we dig down, let's see, network, clear, login. This is our login response.message. Email or password were incorrect. That's what I'm looking to get into. That's what I want to say. Res.message. That's what I thought it would display. Else front end res.message, right? That's what I had in there. ERR.message. Let's put that in the console too. Console log err.message. That's what I thought it would display, but it didn't. It said something else. But clearly it's hitting that network. Clear, login, click the red, there's my message. Well, regardless, we know what's happening here. In this case, we can literally email or password. Bada bing, bada boom. Awesome. We have checked off the current working problems that we know of and are in a good working state. Now, you know, this was a lengthy walkthrough. Of course, now we get to apply this to our bug tracker, which will be just as lengthy, if not, as it typically is, more in detailed. Right? Because, you know, we have logins, we have users, we have permissions, it's full stack. There's just a lot to it, and whoops. That's kind of what's coming around the corner is the next lab, which is to do, well, we can look at it. Let's look at our next lab. So we did 501 and we did 502. Where 502, I'm basically, this is what you'll turn in this week for your attendance. You'll turn in 502 and you just mocked up basically all these components. But now we get to actually implement some functionality, right? So if I go to 503, and I rename these to 503, we get getting some React router going, right? Get React router going, get some Toastify going. Get React router all set up. Get your authentication set up. So we'll walk through this together. And some of this will change. I'm gonna not worry about this. But this is a very lengthy assignment that we'll get a start on today. And well, we will not finish this week because we've got till the end of today, but we'll at least get a start on 0503. Grant, you good?
Yep.
All right, cool.